So please go ahead with any questions you'd like to ask.
You can hardly hear me, so I'm going to ask questions without a mask on. So, is there a difference between faith, as you were describing it this morning, and devotion?
I think devotion is one aspect of faith. Traditionally, Buddhists talk about three types of faith: belief, wonder or awe, and aspiration. So they can be applied to different objects, in which case it's a belief is believing in cause and result or karma, and awe is the attitude one has toward the three jewels, and aspiration is the attitude one has towards the state of Buddhahood. But they can also be applied to any one object of faith. So, for example, if it's a guru to whom you are devoted, you believe that they are an authentic or qualified teacher, and therefore you are in awe of their ability to help you, and you have the aspiration that through their help you achieve the same state as they have. So of those three types, awe or wonderment would correspond, I think, to devotion. Sure.
Or unhealthy?
The genuineness or lack of genuineness of transmission. Basically, a healthy spiritual institution helps the people who take part in it to grow and to progress. Okay.
Thank you for the teachings.
You're welcome.
I feel like I'm coming full circle because you gave the very first Buddhist teaching I ever went to.
Well, apparently I didn't scare you away, so that's good.
No, you pretty well sold me. You were my
Oh.
first interview, too.
Whoa.
So I have another new Buddhist in my, well, part-time Buddhist, my daughter.
Mhm.
And we were having, this isn't directly related to this morning, but you touched on it this morning.
Okay.
So I was setting up a new shrine, and we were having this discussion about Buddhism and spirituality in general. And she's taken refuge with Rinpoche,
Mhm.
but is a little bit hot and cold with it. And said, her comment to me was that she was losing some of her faith or her belief because of karma, and that she doesn't believe karma. And I said, well, the way Rinpoche explained it to me was that you really just need to believe what happened to you last month affects who you are today. You don't need to straight off the box. But she said what she was struggling with was that she had a dear friend who was suffering immense pain, and that the thought that that pain was a result of her previous bad karma, and in some way she deserves that suffering because of her past bad karma, that she can't wrap her mind around that or buy into that. And I said, I don't think that's the way it works, but I didn't have really good words. And I actually said at that time that we need to ask Lama Yeshe because he'll have much better words than I will. So here's my opportunity.
Well, first of all, there are slightly different views among Buddhist masters as to whether or not everything that happens to us is a result of our own previous actions. Some, for whom I've interpreted, have said that everything down to how many leaves I see in that tree out there is a result of my own previous karma. And others differentiate between things that happen as a result of our previous actions and things that are accidental. So first of all, I don't know. Secondly, His Holiness the 17th Karmapa has emphasized in his presentation of karma, and I'm thinking specifically about one time that I was interpreting for him in New Delhi, and he was actually teaching the three principles of the path. And of course, as a very concise, but as a form of stages of the path, or Lamrim teaching, the three principles of the path does emphasize karma. But the way His Holiness presented it was very interesting, because he said, you don't need to believe that you are going to experience the negative results of your bad deeds, or the pleasant or positive results of your good deeds. All you need to believe is that what you do matters. He says that if you abstain from wrongdoing and engage in good deeds because you believe that you'll be happier yourself, that's one possible motivation. And as he said, that is a traditional understanding of karma. But it's enough if you think that the effect you have in the world around you is most important. And so he said that the most important thing to understand about karma is interconnectedness, that we're all interconnected. And that therefore everything I do and everything I say will have an effect on the world around me and also on me. So if your daughter doesn't want to believe in the eschatological belief of, future lives and so on, that's fine. All we need is a basis for, ethical decisions, for correct ethical decisions.
So her friend's suffering, it's not a Buddhist view that suffering is like she somehow deserves it because of her past.
Well, nobody deserves suffering. The word deserve has no meaning in a Buddhist context, because deserve really is based on a kind of teleological concept. And so nobody deserves to suffer. It's like if I take a hammer and smash my hand with it, it's going to hurt. That is going to happen. But it's not because I deserve it. It's because because actions have consequences. And there's no concept of justice, ultimate justice in Buddhism. Even the most, like when the criminal justice system comes under discussion, it's very, very hard to communicate our understanding, our cultural understanding of justice, because to at least many of the Asian masters for whom I've interpreted, to them the purpose of a criminal justice system is prevention, to discourage people from hurting one another. And it's not that it's right that someone goes to prison. It may be right in that it's a necessary thing, but it's not. It would be better if they didn't, if they hadn't done the crime and didn't have to do the time. So there's really, as far as I know, there's no concept of deserving in Buddhism. The only closest thing we come to it is we really deserve to be perfect because we're capable of it. So if we deserve anything, we deserve Buddhahood. Everyone deserves Buddhahood and nothing less. And that's because we're made, so to speak, for that. We think it's unnatural to grow spiritually, but actually it is our nature. We've just gotten into some bad habits. So no, it's not.
So maybe that's just where that Western concept of a punishing God gets brought into it.
I don't know if it entirely comes from the our background in the Western, so-called Western religions, but it certainly seems to be somewhat connected. But I don't know if it's only that. There are some other things that attitudes that seem somehow embedded in us culturally.
Thank you.
Okay, the next. So actually from now I will say who's asking the question. I think maybe that helps you. So Peter Elias. Lama Yeshe speaks about doing the practice that actually works for you personally. He also speaks of some of us at times not really being willing to put in the work. How can we authentically distinguish between these two?
Well, I think in some way these are two rather separate issues. The measure of whether a practice is working or not is not whether we enjoy it or feel like doing it. It is whether doing that practice over time causes us to become better people, better person. So, in most cases, our resistance to a practice that is making us, that is helping us, is either laziness or another form of resistance. The worst type of laziness is not simply that we're too lazy to do it. It's a lack of self-confidence, a lack of belief. Normally in English we don't think of that as laziness, but it is defined in Buddhism as a type of laziness, that self-disparagement is a big problem. And the reason why self-disparagement is said to be a greater problem than simply being lazy in the ordinary way is because of the power of aspiration and hope. Self-disparagement prevents us from hoping, from aspiring, and from developing the proper determination.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So the next one is Ilya. How to strengthen determination to be free, not to be distracted by worldly dharmas as a temporary pleasure or soporifics. Basically, how do I approach worldly pleasures being mindful of emptiness?
I think that for most of us, the best way is to remind ourselves of impermanence. So when we're doing something that we enjoy, we need to, it will help our balance if we remind ourselves that it's not going to last. And if we're doing something we don't enjoy, it will help us if we remind ourselves that it's not going to last. That's it.
All right, next, Marina. It is said of Buddhism that if there's no lineage, there is no Dharma. A lineage authenticates a teacher, and that it is transmitted. And what is transmitted is a lineage of teachings, not so much the individual Dharma of the teacher. Can you elaborate how this method of discerning a teacher is very specific to receiving authentic Buddhist teachings for us modern Westerners who tend to be spiritual shoppers and do not come from spiritual traditions that emphasize lineage? Thank you for this wonderful teaching.
In his, I think his most recent book, or at least the one I read most recently, which is called Poison is Medicine, His Eminence Dzongtsar Chinzin Rinpoche, in talking about those who teach without a lineage, uses the expression mushroom gurus, which suddenly, mushrooms can just appear overnight now the mushrooms today were delicious. I'm not disparaging mushrooms. And I think one of the things that he's getting at is people who are making up their own spiritual system. And the way that Buddhism works is that we're taught that the only person who can actually do that, who can make up an entire system, is a Buddha. And that's why, we refer to the Buddha, as the Tumba. Tumba, we translate it as teacher, although I've seen in some sanghas they translate it as founder, and it has a little bit of the connotation. Tumba means a person who shows something. So the Buddha showed us how to practice. And ultimately, we would say even he didn't make it up. But certainly no one since him in Buddhism who is authentic has attempted to create their own thing. And so the importance of lineage for us is the same as its importance for any other Buddhist, which is that the point of lineage is to make sure that what you practice came from the Buddha. And since the Buddha lived, more than 2,500 years ago, there have to be people in between. And so we know who our teachers are or were. We know who their teachers were, and so on, going back to the time of the Buddha.
That's all the questions I have so far. Anyone here?
Thank you for the
please.
teaching. You mentioned Lama Yeshe Tonglen and to use it for a future self, which I found very interesting. And could you please elaborate on that?
We find this mentioned in our principal manual on that practice, which was written by Jungong Kultrul the Great and is called The Great Path of Awakening or To Awakening, I forget how the English. And he's basing it on one of the lines in the root text by Chikawa Yeshe Dorje, which says the sequence of exchange begins with yourself. So that means that before you're willing to take on the suffering of others, you have to be willing to take on your own future suffering that you're trying to avoid. And of course, I suppose you could say it's a trick because it doesn't actually cause you to suffer, but you have to be willing that it might. It won't. And in a sense, you know, I suppose you're not really supposed to tell people that it won't make them suffer, because then you're not really taking it seriously enough. But basically, you have to be willing to experience what you are going to have to experience but are trying to put off before you'll be willing to actually take on the suffering of others. And there are several ways of doing this. You can simply, if you do the practice in the traditional way where you're imagining breathing in all this gunk and crud and breathing out all this brilliant light, then you can imagine a duplicate of yourself in front of you and think that that's you in the future. Could be 5 minutes in the future, tomorrow, whatever. And then you take on that person's suffering and give them your happiness. And then you can do it with other people. The thing about Tonglen is it works best if you work on it gradually. So you start with yourself, and then you switch it to whoever you love most. And then you can add other people you love, and then people you just like, and so on, and then people you don't care about, and then people you dislike, and so on.
Thank you.
So Pemawango, it seems that many of the lineage holders who are recognized as legitimate now were not necessarily considered so in their own time. Can you talk about this?
There is a tendency to have more respect for people of the past because we don't have to deal with them. So, for example, we chant the lineage prayer and we pray to Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gyamtso, the Karmapas, and so on. But as Lama Trato mentioned a couple of weeks ago, or whenever he was teaching, Marpo was not someone we would conventionally describe as a nice guy. I'm sure he could be nice. He was a pretty tough customer. Notably tough on Milarepa, but he was also tough on Mokdun Chukwu Dorje and others. So it's very easy to pray to a statue of Marpa and think, oh, Marpa's so wonderful. Personally, I would be terrified to even be in the same room with Marpa. And So there's that. In terms of recognition at their time, to continue to use Lord Marpa as an example, he was known as an authentic teacher to his disciples at the time. But he was not known as such to his neighbors. He was a bit of what we would call a hidden yogi. In his case, he didn't, live in caves all the time. He did some of the time. But he had a dairy farm and land holdings and so on. So his neighbors and many of his relatives thought of him basically as a grouchy farmer, And he was thought of that way because he concealed his virtues and exaggerated his, if he had faults, what appeared to be his faults. And that's what we are encouraged to do. As Jungalo Dutai wrote, there are two things in this world that are none of your business. Your own virtues are none of your business, and others' faults are none of your business. There are two things that are your business: others' virtues and your faults. Now, this sounds kind of radical or dramatic because it's a reversal of a habit. Bardo Rinpoche used this analogy many years ago, and everybody else seemed already aware of it, but I didn't, until I heard him, I wasn't aware of how to hang a poster properly. There still are posters, I guess. When I was a kid, that was what we had. I remember I had a poster of a Canadian politician, then I had one of Jimi Hendrix, and then later on I got, Bruce Lee, whatever. So the thing about a poster is it comes wrapped up, and you remove the cellophane or whatever it is, and then you want to hang it up, and you want it to hang up flat. Now, I never knew how to properly hang a poster, because I would hang it up, put Scotch tape or some kind of masking tape or something, and it would curl back up again. Even if I laid it flat under an entire Encyclopedia Britannica. For those who don't remember, there used to be these things called books. Yeah. Now we have these, but anyway, they were heavy. Books are very heavy. You could leave it there for a week, and it would still curl back up. So Rinpoche used the analogy for reversal meditation, but if you simply take that poster and you roll it up inside out, or the opposite of whichever way it came when you bought it, just doing that for a few seconds, it will lie flat when you put it up. So that's what we're doing. For example, in the practice of Tonglen, we don't want to become doormats. But if we simply say, I want myself and others to be happy, there's still too much selfishness in it. So therefore, we radically, we do the opposite. I don't remember what the question was. I hope that had something to do with it.
It was about...
Oh yeah, about lineage holders?
Yeah.
Are we still on that one? So, when Marpa was appearing as a mundane, possibly even slightly dissipated guy, he was practicing the concealing your virtues and only revealing your faults. And now that makes it sometimes hard for us to know in the present, but usually you can tell. Basically, to use Bardo Rinpoche as an example, he was constantly concealing all of his spiritual qualities. And that's a sign of a real teacher.
What you just said, Lama Yeshe, brings up a question I've been thinking about on and off for a while. If someone mistreats a spiritual teacher because they're so good at concealing their qualities, doesn't the person who's mistreating the spiritual teacher take on?
Depends on their motivation. Telopa, there are many different accounts of his early life and so on. But what they all have in common is that after he gained we'd call a level of realization, where he saw his Yidam, Chakrasamvara, the Hiruka, face to face, in order to perfect his realization, he re-entered the world, so to speak. He had previously been living with his feet bound in chains to just keep him from doing anything except meditate. I don't know how much play there was, but anyway. So when he re-entered the world, he worked by day as a sesame seed grinder, which is why we call him the till guy, or telopa, till meaning sesame seed. And at night, he worked as the doorman at a house of prostitution. And the house of prostitution was owned by a madam, I guess we would say. And so he worked there at night, and he worked on the sesame seeds by day. And during this, he achieved, we believe, he achieved Buddhahood. And at some point, I forget exactly what happened, but at some point his nighttime employer, the lady who owned the house, realized, maybe she saw him floating in the air or something, doing something that one doesn't normally see, realized that he was a siddha, an enlightened being. And she felt terrible regret at having employed this sublime being, wonderful being, as a bodyguard, doorman, that she went to him and she apologized. And he said, and he said, but you didn't know. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't know. And then he handed her a flower, and she achieved enlightenment on the spot. So she had not done anything wrong. I mean, leaving her business, that out of it for the moment. She had not acted toward him improperly.
I guess I'm confused. I'm getting confused about the message. The message I think I'm hearing is it's very important to hide your qualities. If you have any qualities at all, like Rinpoche, to hide them.
It's best if you can.
If you can.
So
even if the people around you don't recognize your qualities and don't treat you in the way, if they knew your qualities in the way that they should be treating you.
Yes, but you can also stand up for yourself. I mean, you don't want to put yourself in harm's way. You don't want to, as I said earlier, be a doormat. What you want to hide, you don't have to hide, let's say, you have a certain lifestyle. There are things you do, things you don't do, and people are going to know that, You don't have to hide that. What you have to hide is your visions, dreams that turn out to be prophetic, spiritual experiences of all kinds. Normally, these are hidden. There will be one person in your life who serves as your spiritual advisor, so someone to whom you have access, like let's say Lama Chotop, someone like that, then you would share them as needed with them, but only when needed, and not just to brag or, you know. That's the stuff that has to be kept hidden. Otherwise it won't grow, and you won't grow.
Thank you.
So this is going to sort of follow up on Sally's, or your answer just now to Sally's question. And I asked this question to Lama Trato at the last teaching, and I heard your translation of his answer, but I'm interested in your answer, is that this lineage, because it's so fresh and new, has been very successful in Tibet of people attaining
Yeah.
certain levels of attainment more quickly, more efficiently, because this is such a new lineage. And that this is happening right now today in Tibet. And I asked what kind of evidence that this is going to work for Westerners, to just kind of give us a little pep talk that.
So what did he say?
He said that, that it must have been happening, and brought up
Oh, he said there must be people,
who
like-
have attained.
yeah, and are concealing it. Yeah, and I
And
remember he
concealing it.
mentioned Trungpa
Yeah,
Rinpoche?
Trungpa Rinpoche, that's
okay.
where I was blanking
Yeah.
on his name. And I a little bit cringed, because there was also a lot of people who experienced negative things around Trungpa Rinpoche. So I personally cringed a little bit. So just I believe that, I mean, obviously I'm here and I devote a lot of time and effort. I do fully believe in this lineage. But a little bit of perspective on how can this work for us, because we're so different in the West than, and I do believe that this lineage is brought here on purpose, but I'm just interested in your perspective.
Well, one thing, since Lama Trato brought up the Chepti Trungpa Rinpoche, is that's a distinct lineage, his own, is the Sermon Kaju. And so he's an example that really any authentic lineage will bring. What Lama meant to say was any authentic lineage will bring attainment if we practice properly. One thing we must avoid, and I'm not scolding you when I say this, but one thing we must avoid is unnecessary criticism of other people's teachers. And it's so easy to get it wrong, to get what's really going on wrong. Especially if the teacher's activity is, what would we say, unconventional. But to address, since you brought up him in particular, I only met the 11th Trungpa Rinpoche once, but I was more impressed by him on that day, December 4th, 1979, than I've ever been by anyone other than Bardo Rinpoche and the Karmapa and a couple of others. And I'll tell you exactly what impressed me. I knew, and I don't know how I knew, but he exuded it, that this person sitting in front of me was completely unselfish. it was the first time I hadn't met Kala Rinpoche yet. I had not met the 16th Karmapa yet. It was the first time I actually found myself face to face with someone whom I was dead certain, and still am, was completely unselfish. Now that's me. That was my take. And so it's important that we not make assumptions, because we don't have to deal with other teachers. If you choose the teacher you want to choose, that you want to study with, but you don't have to in any way disparage others. Now, so that's an aside. And again, I didn't say that to scold you. I just, the proof that this works is of two kinds. There is the anecdotal evidence of people achieving rainbow bodies, which is going on. And other anecdotal evidence, such as the descriptions of their experiences to the great teachers like Khenpo Achu, one of Lama's, Lama Trantop's teachers, who has since passed away and achieved a rainbow body. So there is enough anecdotal evidence that people practicing various forms of Tibetan Buddhism are achieving something that I can't tell apart from Buddhahood. So it's achieving something tremendous. There is enough evidence that it is not a rare or unexpected phenomenon that I think that is proof. The second type of proof is our own, what we can extrapolate from our own individual experience. We can't know what Buddhahood is like until we achieve it, or what being a bodhisattva is like until we become one. But we can know what direction we're headed in. So if I'm walking this way, even if I've made it only 2 steps, I know the direction I'm headed in. I know that as long as I keep walking, I'm going to come to those red doors. That much I know. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get to the doors. I don't know how much strength it's going to take for me to, push the push bars and open the door. And I'm not too sure what's on the other side. But I know that that's the direction I want to walk in. And any one of us, I think, that much we can know.
So I'm just making sure I get to the right question. What is the best method for overcoming the worst kind of laziness? Self-disparagement. It's Peter Elias.
I would say the most important thing is to receive teachings on Buddha nature, and ideally from His Eminence Sutta Rinpoche. Sutta Rinpoche teaches Buddha nature with a kind of unique power, in my experience, and using colloquial words. I remember one time Sutra Rinpoche was teaching, not here, it was elsewhere, but Bardo Rinpoche was present, as were other Tibetan masters. And Sutra Rinpoche was teaching in English. And he said, Buddha nature is easy to understand a little bit. It's what you refer to in English when you say, I felt touched. This made me feel touched. And anyone can define Buddha nature using jargon, the jargon of Buddhism. That doesn't take, you don't even have to be a Lama, let alone a great one. Only a realized person can say that, and with confidence. Now, the thing that, the amusing sequel to the story was that, Bardo Rinpoche understood English, of course, but most of the other Tibetans present didn't. And he said to one of his peers, he said that Sutra Rinpoche just said the most amazing thing. And they said, really? What was it? He translated it back into Tibetan, and the other Lama said, that doesn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. What? Well, that, the way Sutra Rinpoche presents Buddha nature is, in my experience, utterly mind-blowing. So he is the remedy, personally, in my opinion, for self-disparagement. His holiness, of course, but Sutra Rinpoche, maybe because he's Maitreya, his message of Buddha nature is so strong. So, yeah, that's my recommendation. The best method for overcoming self-disparagement is His Eminence Thai Sutra Rinpoche.
So, Pimawangwa, is it true that in order to be a true lineage holder, you must have practiced and realized, actualized the teachings within that lineage?
Well, it depends on what you mean by lineage holder, and here's why I say that. For example, in the lineage supplication, we refer to ourselves as lineage holders. You say, I hold your lineage, grant the blessing of your example. So in a sense, we are all trying to be lineage holders, but we're not the Joma Karmapa or His Eminence Sutra Rinpoche or Bardo Rinpoche. So if we try to be whom we're not yet, we are being very destructive of other beings' welfare. So the standard is how do you define a lineage holder? Was that what you wanted to know, or do you have to have actualized the teachings? To be a lineage holder with a capital L and capital H, like an independent guru, absolutely. But if you may hold many, many lineages. For example, Sanjin Yempa Rinpoche, he's not the only one, but he's well known for transmitting many different lineages of empowerments and so on, all with excellence. Because he's realized they all mean the same thing. So it doesn't mean that they have to have practiced each and every technique or lineage or system that they can transmit. So in that sense, no. But they have to have achieved realization through some method. So don't misunderstand me when I said we're all trying to be lineage holders. I mean, we're trying to emulate. That's really what it means in the lineage supplication. So I have to be very careful so I'm not, misquoted. So basically, it would be better to say the only person who can serve as a guru, an independent spiritual teacher, is someone with great realization.
Keeping dreams and visions hidden, what about those that are not necessarily of a spiritual nature? That is, those that are working related and or about worldly happenings.
Why would you tell someone about them? I mean, there has to be a reason. You know, for example, if you're going through certain types of therapy, there might be reasons to describe your dreams. Or if you have a spiritual teacher who wants to know about, or asks you about them. Or if you're actively involved in the pursuit of dream yoga in any of its various stages, then you might have specific reasons to talk about all sorts of dreams. But basically, I'm the worst person to say this because I'm probably one of the most guilty of it. But we all talk too much. We simply talk too much. We talk, I'm going to use myself as an example. Half the time, I'm talking just to talk. That's not what talking is for. Talking should be for the sake of honest, helpful communication. Either to get your own needs or necessities met, or hopefully to meet those of another or others. So the Buddha encourages us before we say something, and I think I've seen almost this word for word in sutras, ask yourself, before you say something, why do I want to say this? Why do I want to talk about this? What effect is it going to have on others? And there are three criteria what we're encouraged to impose on our talk. First of all, the question is it true? Second, is it helpful? And third, is it kind? It's not only Buddhism that talks about this, of course. So, if there is a reason why it would be helpful for me to describe a random dream to somebody else, then I would do so. But I can't think of many. The only context in which I've talked about dreams recently is when they're funny, they're silly, to amuse one or another person. Because my dreams are pretty wacko, that much I'll say. And not, they're like Looney Tunes. All right.
Well, she did say, and I'm not sure if this helps with the dreaming, if a vision or something I want to manifest for my work, like an animated version of the Floridian aquifer and our springs.
That must be Lou Merritt.
No?
That's not Lou Merritt?
No. Norjan Lama.
Oh. That's her? Yeah. No, Norbu. That's Lou also. Yeah, that's Lou.
Oh, that's Lou?
Yeah. She's all about water conservation, especially the springs in Florida. Okay. That's my answer.
Okay. So Annie Bond, could somebody clarify the name Sitra Rinpoche? Thank you.
Situ Rinpoche.
Oh, that's what she was saying. Okay, it's Situ.
Who?
Yeah, His Eminence Thai Situ Rinpoche.
Rinpoche,
Oh,
yes.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, let me look and see emails. That's all the questions I have so far.
Anyone got anything? You do? You have a question? No? is it? Going once? Going twice? All right. So let's chant the dedications and then we will adjourn for this afternoon. It sounds so fancy when you say adjourn. Sunam de ye tam je zeng bai nye dom ne nye be ranam bam je ga na je ba la dro ba ye sim be zon le ro wa jo ge wan de yin je wo gun zhenam yeshe zo zo de senam yeshe le zhong wei ang gu nian dong ba zhou jiang zhu sem ni ren po ji ma ji ba nam ji zhu ji jian ba nian ba me ba dong gong ne gong du ba wa re zhou sem jian tam ji de dong den zhu ji ngan zhuo tam ji dong du dong ba zhou zheng zhu zhen ba gan da sa zhuo ba de da guan jie ma lam zhuo ba zhou song jie ren jie zi zin dang pe gar zhen guan de zhao du du ling ba ye Zam je me zhong zhe bu song a zhi si zhi zhong da ra zha be da zhi shu. Thank you all.